Episode 1 On Approach. Sterilized air never quite sat right with Hugo. It was the taste for him, a certain bitterness that came with anything that was ingested in the sealed environment of the ship's biodome. Artificial bronze rays crept through the blinds of his quarters, slowly rising him from his rest. Oh, how he wished to be back in cryo with the others, to be blissfully dreaming of the home humanity had left behind. With a small defiant sigh, Hugo stood from his rack onto the cold metallic floor. Goosebumps crept up his ebony skin as he grunted away his. Even with the meds prescribed to him to help him sleep, there wasn't much rest to be found now that his, humanities journey was finally coming to a close. Aurora, please read off my daily tasks, Hugo grunted as he began to pour the water for the instant coffee in his cupboard. A faint ding filled the air before a woman's voice echoed into the room. It was light and emotionless as he began to drone off a list of pre-registered items. Meet with Captain Ramato on the star deck to discuss current mission status. There was a slight pause. Meet with the Federation Council. Hugo nodded to no one as he watched the dark brown liquid circling in his cup, chasing the steam through the air into nothing. Begin preparations for the landing party onto Odessa. Hugo's eyes flicked up at the words. Odessa. The grand prize. The finish line. With a few commands, he cut off the AI before he could finish. Grabbing his coffee, he took a seat looking out onto the vast ocean of stars he was rocketing through. Within mere hours from now, he would be looking at the surface of humanity's fresh start. After 20 long years in space, they had finally made it. Around an hour passed, and with another cup of coffee poured into a thermos for the walk, Hugo set out the door into the artificial colony of Optimus One. Optimus One had been the absolute pinnacle of humanity's achievements, containing roughly 1,000 square miles of man-made residential, agricultural, and industrial sectors. Meant to mimic the golden age of Earth, it contains its own towns, shopping centers, hospitals, anything you could find back home, you could find on Optimus One. Above, contained between the ozone and the main shield for the colony, sat its prized possession, an artificial sun capable of producing safe UV rays to provide food for the plant life that was used to sustain the colonists. With a greater understanding of deep space knowledge gained over the 500 years since humanity had put a man on the moon, scientists were able to make this sun, producing massively less heat, can only be controlled to simulate weather patterns, but also produce little to none of the harmful radiation previously produced by its predecessor. It was also safer and quicker to be absorbed by the plethora of UV-powered electrical systems that dotted the station. Hugo stared at the blazing ball in pure amazement every time, at least until it made his eyes hurt. Even a dulled sun could give you a headache. With a brisk pace, he made his way out down the stairs of his barracks and out onto the lane. Soldiers, contractors, and other colonists bustled about, preparing, everyone burning with a hum of hope radiating off of them to one another. Optimus One had been a wonderful paradise for humanity, but they all held the same sentiment for solid ground, to be out of the perils of deep space travel and settled onto Odessa's promise of a new home. A smile spread across Hugo's face as he looked out onto the residents of the colony. The gravity of the mission humanity was facing so close to finishing, he could use all the optimism he could get. As the walk neared its end, Hugo approached a towering spire that acted as the elevator to the command structure for Optimus One. A mixture of feelings welled within his stomach as he hit the button for the elevators to reach the star deck. He knew this could very well be the last meeting of the UEC before arrival. If everything didn't go exactly as planned, if one thing was left to chance after this, it could very well spell the end of humanity. The elevator rose for what seemed like an eternity before finally opening into a narrow room with glass walls used for viewing the surrounding area. A conference table stood directly in its center, and to Hugo's surprise, it sat empty, save for one man at the head of it. Steel eyes beamed up from the display they were scanning to meet Hugo's gaze. The officer rose in his seat before straightening his uniform and rendering a salute. Commander Waltz, the man barked as Hugo returned his salute. The man lowered his arm to stand at rest, and Hugo smiled wearily. If ever there was a dedicated, true-to-form soldier, it was Captain Romano. Where's the council, Captain? I was under the impression that all of us were to meet in order to discuss the landing on Odessa. Hugo pulled a chair from the other end of the table and sat, gesturing for the captain to do the same. The captain moved to sit in the offered seat, his face wrinkled in what Hugo could only assume was distress, a face not easily seen on the caliber of a man like Ramato. With a few taps on a keyboard in front of him, he brought up a video feed of a sight that pitted Hugo's stomach instantly. On the feed, a military installation was burning. He knew this installation all too well. From the feed, he could see bodies of soldiers being ripped apart, torn to shreds. Standing over them what appeared to be men and women barely clothed, blood and foam pouring from their mouths, shrieks of pain and rage emitting from open maws that shoved large pieces of the soldiers into greedy gullets. With each piece ingested, they would shout louder and louder, until all that could be heard was the solid, shrill shriek of these monsters. The base fell at 1300 PST. The soldiers fought them as long as they could, but the raiders have only grown in numbers since Optimus departed. Romano killed the feed and met a misty-eyed Hugo. And what of Vanessa? Hugo managed to say through a tightened throat. He knew the answer. Those cannibals were in the millions by the time he had departed, and he could only imagine the forces that his daughter, the acting commander of the last bastion of humanity's defenses on Earth, stood tall against. Her bio-reader went offline, and there are no more feeds around the compound, but Romano was stopped by a wave of Hugo's hand. He didn't need to say anything more. Hugo stood from his chair and made his way over to one of the windows overlooking the city, looking down upon the bustling crowds below him. All those souls who had been spared the fate of what the last of humanity had to bear. He could barely face it. I begged her to come, you know. It wasn't like we couldn't take her. Romano moved to stand next to Hugo as the grieving father spoke, and lifted a hand to rest on his longtime comrade's shoulder. She wouldn't. Said she couldn't rest while the people that she had sworn to protect, were dying while she got to play at being a pioneer. Hugo's eyes closed, and he could see her smiling again. Her warm green eyes that never lost their shine. But that image was soon replaced by the flames that had been shown to him on that monitor, and the thought of his only child's lifeless body in the hands of those animals. I hate them. I remember them. Watching them hang children from the power lines like they were fresh cattle to slaughter. Seeing droves of them pour over our biodomes, never taking any food or the resources. It's just people. Only ever people. Hugo looked down at Romano with stained cheeks. Why would she stay in the face of all of that? Romano met his friend's gaze with a mix of sincerity and sternness. Because she was your child, sir. Giving up on this mission was never an option for her, just like it was never an option for you. With that, he gave a firm squeeze to Hugo's shoulder. Well, given the nature of your tragedy, sir, I'm fully prepared to handle the meeting with the council on your behalf. Hugo stopped Romano before he could finish. With an act of effort, he tightened his stomach and raised his chin. He would have plenty of time to grieve after humanity had planted itself on its new home. No, we have made it to the finish line. Call in the council and we'll go ahead as scheduled. Romano gave one final look of admiration to his comrade before signaling on the intercom to let the council know that they were ready. Hugo steeled himself and took a chair, staring out into space as he waited for the council's arrival.